So the ogre has immunity to fear, frightened, and prone, weakness to fire, resistance to frost, and you notice that its extra thick hide might give it a DR of about 2. You also have the faint sense that its attacks are both versatile and magical.
Hey, what's up guys? Mikey here. Back in high school, I thought that Shakespeare was a hard language to learn. I still think that, but Dungeons and Dragons was even harder than I imagined it would be. I am going back over there for a rematch, but right after I study up first.
Oh, that beeth rich.
Oh, I'll show you too. Dunces and Dragons is the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick fall from the sky after a jousting accident, and they find themselves in the Middle Ages having to save a medieval bikini bottom from an evil wizard known as Planktonomor. This episode aired on February 20th, 2006, and is the first episode of the series to air in the year 2006. If one counts this weird flash animation of Patchy the Pirate from episode 122, Have You Seen This Snail, as an actual appearance, then this would be the first 22-minute episode without any appearance or mention of Patchy and Potty the Parrot whatsoever.
Squelch.
This is also the second 22-minute episode of Season 4, and the last of the ones this season at that. When this episode was being marketed, it was referred to as SpongeBob SquarePants Lost in Time, and it really focused on the new characters SpongeBob and Patrick interact with, like Squidly and the Dark Knight. Burger King had some SpongeBob toys as promotion, and this time they didn't have a sweepstakes to give a viewer a grand prize, which, considering how the Where's Gary sweepstakes ended up being confusing in retrospect, this was for the better. All the marketing worked out for this episode, as it ended up premiering to 8.56 million views when it came out in 2006, making it the most viewed episode of Season 4 and the second most viewed episode of the whole series. And for good reasons. This episode is one of the best episodes of the show in my opinion. I remember watching it so much as a kid. After the emotional impact of the previous special, Have You Seen This Snail, I was very excited to see any future SpongeBob specials for a good while in the future. And unlike the previous heartless guy who didn't like SpongeBob crying over his best friend running away, there's even less negative press around this episode. Literally, the only less than positive opinion I've heard about this episode was from then SpongeBob creative director and now co-showrunner Vincent Waller. He didn't hate the episode, but thought it didn't need to be a 22-minute episode. And to that, I disagree. And we'll get to my stance on that right after we watch this episode and experience another time-traveling episode of SpongeBob. So the episode starts up and SpongeBob and Patrick are on their way to watch a joust and are amazed by the venue it takes place at. They meet a guard who wants to unalive himself, and then Patrick eats mutton right before the show starts. Then the king starts up the event by asking for 2 audience volunteers to participate in the royal joust. SpongeBob and Patrick wants to join, and the king agrees to let them, even though they didn't know what they were getting into. They're the only ones in a sold-out arena who volunteered for that. The employees told them they were in the joust, but neither of them knew how to ride a seahorse despite SpongeBob. The seahorses were very rough and scared SpongeBob and Patrick as they charged towards each other. SpongeBob hit Patrick with his long pointy sword and Patrick was flung out of the building. Then the other seahorse launched SpongeBob out of the castle, and they both landed on the ground with the sky now yellow and bright green. A detail that every school teacher misses when they're talking about the Middle Ages. Then some knights showed up and arrested SpongeBob and Patrick for falling from the sky and threw them in a dungeon. They found an octopus playing the clarinet badly, and SpongeBob thought he was Squidward. But he then explained he was Squidly, the king's royal fool, and explained through song how he ended up in the dungeon after accidentally giving the king a stroke. SpongeBob didn't quite believe they were in a different time period. After that, a giant jellyfish dragon arrived in the village, destroying most of the buildings in town while Squidly sang a song about it, even ye old bowling alley.
Not the bowling alley!
This finally made SpongeBob realize he and Patrick were in the medieval times, and a differently named bowling alley was all it took for him. The dungeon master took SpongeBob and Patrick to see the king, but SpongeBob was insistent on bringing Squidly with them, much to the dungeon master's reluctance. In the throne room, the king, who looked like Mr. Krabs, was very sad about the dragon sent by the evil wizard Planktonomor, who destroyed so much of the village, and told this to his daughter, Princess Pearl. Take a wild guess who she looks like. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidly arrived in the throne room, and King Krabs was not happy to see Squidly again, but he let Squidly sing a song answering all the king's troubles. The song was about how King Krabs did nothing to stop the dragon, and the village being smoldered was all his fault. SpongeBob and Patrick enjoyed this and sang along, but the king didn't. He ordered the three of them to the guillotine. SpongeBob and Patrick tried to explain they weren't from there, but everything he said just made the king more furious and just had them sent to the guillotine anyway. Pearl told her dad to spare them and reminded him of the prophecy about 2 knights falling from the sky and go save the king's village from the dragon, meaning SpongeBob and Patrick were those 2 strangers who were meant to fulfill the prophecy. Then why didn't you tell him that before he ordered them to the guillotine? Then the dragon crashed through the castle and kidnapped the princess. King Krabs tried to save her but got flicked away. Right as SpongeBob and Patrick were saying goodbye, Krabs flew in and destroyed the guillotine. After the dragon left, the king realized SpongeBob and Patrick were the chosen ones and apologized for being an ass to them. He sent them on their quest to the evil wizard's castle to save his daughter and kingdom. Then he found a lost piece of the prophecy that said he needed to kick them out of there, as every world leader does when they encounter somebody of a lower class than them. He then sends Squidly with them so he won't have to listen to bad clarinet music, and it breaks for commercial. Okay, so my Dungeons and Dragons notes so far, I have only seen 1 dungeon and 1 dragon. When it came back from commercial break, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidly found a blacksmith who can forge some weaponry for their journey.
Greetings, Iron Man!
The blacksmith was rude until he learned they wanted some armor. He gave Patrick an identical metal hat and SpongeBob a whole suit of armor and a heavy sword, and we learned that this blacksmith is a god since he didn't die from that. The only light weapon he had was a jellyfish net, which SpongeBob adored. The 3 left on their way, and SpongeBob brought them some Krabby Patties for their journey. Planktonimore, who looks like Sheldon Plankton, saw the knights coming to stop him and wasn't intimidated from them in the slightest. His crystal ball wife Karen, take a wild guess who she looks like, warned him he was being cocky, but Planktonimore wasn't worried and told his dragon to deliver his demands to the king, and the dragon left to do that. As the 3 approached the outskirts of the castle, they encountered the bridge guardian, the Dark Knight. After they explained themselves to her, the Dark Knight was revealed to be Medieval Sandy, without an air helmet. SpongeBob and Medieval Sandy fought with each other, and after a brief battle, the Dark Knight was defeated, but luckily spared by SpongeBob. But she became unconscious and looked like she was about to die until Patrick disgustingly revived her. To show her gratitude for SpongeBob sparing her, she agreed to join them to defeat the wizard and learn some karate, much to SpongeBob's delight. Meanwhile, the king received the wizard's demands and read them without reading glasses, saying he needs to hand over the village and castle or Pearl will die via lava. Why does Planktonimore want the village now? Most of it has already been destroyed by the dragon that he sent. The gang needed to save Pearl as soon as possible, so they carried out a plan to get into the lair that the Dark Knight came up with, much to the others' fear. She pretended to capture them and take them to the wizard to have them tortured. Her description scared SpongeBob so much, and this pleased the guards to the point that they let them all in. When they were safe from the guards, the Dark Knight untied them, and they heard Pearl scream for help. They ran up the stairs to save her, but got tired with how high the tower was. When they reached the top, they were exhausted. They should be thankful that Stairmasters didn't exist then. After Planktonimore taunted SpongeBob, they fought with each other while Patrick, Squidly, and the Dark Knight saved Princess Pearl from the lava. Then the dragon showed up and started attacking the heroes. He defeated Squidly and the Dark Knight pretty quickly. SpongeBob caught him with the jellyfish net, but he soon zapped through it. It looked like all hope was lost for them, so they decided to have the Krabby Patties. The dragon ate one, and he loved it so much. Planktonimore was befuddled by the dragon's behavior, and the dragon defeated him thanks to SpongeBob giving the dragon more Krabby Patties. Later, the village was celebrating SpongeBob and Patrick saving the kingdom and the princess. The Dark Knight was now on the king's side, and the king was making Krabby Patties for the dragon. Squidly played his clarinet badly, and a villager threw a rock at him. This startled the seahorses, and they flung SpongeBob and Patrick in the air, and they hit the ground very hard. They woke back up in the castle, and SpongeBob thought it was all a dream, but we do see Squidly implying the whole thing happened, and the episode ends. What is real, am I right? So that was Dunces and Dragons, and I think I speak for everybody when I say that is a great episode. But before I praise it, I'll mention a brief continuity error. SpongeBob didn't know how to ride a seahorse here, despite writing Mystery in episode 84, My Pretty Seahorse from season 3. But I'll give it a pass since there was so much more going on here compared to what happened with Mystery. Since they were in public and SpongeBob and Patrick had to fight each other and the seahorses were vicious. So there we go, moving on. Some fun facts about me. I never played Dungeons and Dragons before this came out, so the title of this episode was my first exposure to anything D&D related. So even when I see the game or it gets brought up in conversations, most of the time I end up either saying Dunces instead of Dungeons, or I just think of this episode instead. That's how much I watched this back in the day. Also, before I was a teenager, I always thought that Squidly, King Krabs, the Leech, etc. were all just the normal present day characters we know. And I think the biggest reason for that was because of how I always watched the episodes with subtitles on so I can understand what the hell the characters were saying here. The subtitles always refer to Squidly as Squidward, the Dark Knight as Sandy, and so on. Especially since Pearl and Karen have the same names as their modern day counterparts. So it took until my teenage research for me to realize they were different characters. Same song and dance as the future and past counterparts that we saw in episodes 28, SB129 from season 1, and 106, UGG from season 3. But I do like the implications with these characters and their histories, like how Squidward's bad clarinet playing is the result of his ancestor Squidly having problems playing normally. Speaking of characters, I love all the medieval counterparts of the normal characters. Squidly is by far my favorite. Obviously it's because of the songs, but I also like how he's still more cheerful and friendly towards SpongeBob and Patrick. Like how he was concerned before SpongeBob was about to die by the guillotine, when they danced together during the best song of the episode, and when he let SpongeBob help him get out of the dungeon. The songs were always my favorite thing about this episode. It's fun whenever Squidly starts singing. The third song is of course the best out of all 7. Not just because of how pissed off King Krabs gets, not just because it perfectly described the core problem with all the world leaders and government officials, but because it's the longest of all 7 of them. I remember listening to this song often during study hall in junior year of high school. That's how much I liked this one. My second favorite is the one where the dragon burns down the whole town and how it ends with Ye Olde Bowling Alley.
Not the bowling alley!
I didn't even know they had bowling alleys in the 12th century. I like how King Krabs and Princess Pearl are parallels to King Neptune and Princess Mindy from the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. The king rules with an iron fist and is ruthless towards even the people who live in the castle and are just doing their jobs. And the princess encourages her father to show some love and compassion. And the king is also slower and more frank whenever he's alone with his daughter. The dynamic between Planktonomore and Karen is the same as the modern day counterparts and doesn't parallel any other characters, so there isn't much to say about them. But I do like that Karen is a sentient crystal ball in this time period, which definitely makes sense considering this is in the Middle Ages and the villain is a wizard. The dragon jellyfish has a cool design, and the leech is surprisingly inaccurate to real-life leeches. It took me forever to actually notice that the Dark Knight never wore a helmet underwater, which means that either medieval Sandy could breathe underwater, Planktonomore used magic to help her not need a spacesuit or helmet, or it was all a dream like SpongeBob mentioned at the end. Bikini Bottomshire is also a beautiful looking location. I like how the sky here is light green and yellow, which visually differentiates it from the beginning of time locations that we see in SB129 and UGG. The black sky by the Wizards location really helps to set the tone and emphasizes the differences between the locations in this time period. The castle looking like the Krusty Krab is a fun detail that they didn't need to do, but they did it anyway, and I like that. There's no attention drawn to it, but I like that the Dark Knight joined the King's army after Planktonomore was defeated, and she didn't become evil again, or wasn't just completely forgotten about. I do wish we could have seen a bit more of Bikini Bottomshire, but it's still pretty good. Speaking of the castle, I like that the other people of the castle, like the guards and the dungeon master, are clearly not happy working for King Krabs.
Sure thing, Your Highness.
And I like this Hunchback of Notre Dame looking creature who works the guillotine. No attention drawn to him, and I just like his design and appearance. If only he'd joined the rest of the gang on the quest too. I also love some of the other details like the buildings before they get torched, how Squidly looks sad before SpongeBob and Patrick leave him in the dungeon and SpongeBob decides to help out. And on my latest rewatch, I noticed the queen at the beginning and this lady near the end sound rather similar.
Maury, you're supposed to announce the jousting tournament. No, make it stop!
Kind of. I also like when they bring up the Krabby Patties, and then they inadvertently become the reason the heroes win at the end. It's very subtle foreshadowing you don't really think about, but it's done so well here too. It's not in your face or drawn out. It's quick, it's snappy, and we get right back into the action, and then it's brought to our attention again when the climax happens. I love so many sequences throughout the episode. I love when the joust at the beginning goes horribly wrong, the climax when the dragon attacks the heroes, when the dragon storms the castle and kidnaps the princess, when the characters run up the tower, and when SpongeBob and Plain Tanamore duke it out while the others save Pearl.
It's okay.
I think my favorite scene that isn't a song is the fight scene between SpongeBob and the Dark Knight. The music works perfectly well for this sequence, and it just feels like a hilarious SpongeBob scene in general. It's still actiony and works incredibly well for an episode like this. Not to mention all of the awesome banter.
But can you handle my feet of fury?
What is that, like a little rub down?
And speaking of SpongeBob, I always love the visual of him in the suit of armor, and the funny sight of the sword and the blacksmith. The animation throughout the whole thing is very smooth, without the expressions being too cartoony and over the top. And the pacing is done really well too. It doesn't feel like things are dragging. We understand the situation where the evil one-eyed wizard sent the dragon as a plan to get King Krabs' kingdom, and the stakes are growing at a natural pace. Pearl isn't kidnapped as soon as we see SpongeBob and Patrick land in the Middle Ages, and we don't immediately see her over boiling lava afterwards. It takes some time after the dragon is established before she gets kidnapped, and then the adventure progresses a bit before she's even put in more danger. And we keep seeing more obstacles along the way, making it feel more realistic. It never feels like it's slogging in my opinion, but it's not going too fast that it's hard to follow. I love that. And that's why I think this episode works very well as a 22-minute episode. As a TV movie like episode 181, Atlantis SquarePants from season 5, it would be so much more tedious, and with the normal story progression, I don't know how this would work as an 11-minute story. And of course, there are so many funny moments throughout, from the guard trying to kill himself,
Someday, but not today.
to this line,
That's not talking to me.
to the blacksmith scene,
I told you people before, I'll have the rent when I have it!
to Plain Tanamore trolling SpongeBob,
Sparkling or regular? Psychic!
to so many of Squidly's lines.
Everyone beeth a critic.
You untie Patrick and the royal doofus.
That be royal fool. Hours.
I also love how SpongeBob doesn't want to leave Squidly in the dungeon alone, when the Dark Knight is humbled before SpongeBob and wants to learn karate, and when the King apologizes to SpongeBob and Patrick for being mean to them, just to name a few good character moments. As for the very end, I will say it can work either as an actual time travel sequence, which is how I always thought of it as a kid, or just a dream, and the gag with Squidly in the last shot could be another random octopus that just looks like Squidly, or the real Squidward who had to work during this jousting tournament for whatever reason, and just so happens to be dressed like Squidly. As for whichever you want to think of it, I'm fine with either way, but that's not worth arguing about. That's just my explanation for Squidly at the end if it was a dream. But if it was a dream, it's pulled off so well that you don't even realize it. It starts and ends with a fall, but the first one is more painful that of course all this crazy shit happened. For the record, I am leaning towards it actually happened because that's how I thought of it as a kid. It's just more unique compared to what happened with Squidward in season 1, that's all. This episode is so great that there's nothing worth complaining about. The setting is awesome, the characters are so strong, the songs are funny, there are so many great sequences throughout, and this is just another one of the show's many amazing episodes that is still great to watch after all these years. Damn, after how rough the season 3 specials were, season 4 really turned it around. So at this point in the show, these are the better 22-minute specials, and these are the worst ones. I can't wait to see what the next special in season 4 will be like. Oh wow, they wrapped them up early on this season. Well, at least they were both great this time around. Dunces and Dragons is an amazing episode. So many amazing things that I already listed, and even more that I couldn't really get into. It's so great from start to finish, and it nailed so much, if not everything, of what it set out to do, that it definitely deserves the amount of views it got on the day it premiered. Not to mention how unique it is compared to, well, most of the episodes from the first 4 seasons in general. And after all that, I think I'm ready to go back for a Dungeons and Dragons rematch. But I didn't see any Krabby Patties in the first game I played, so wish me luck. Alright, I'm back and I got a new character. He's a gnomish fighter with a heart of gold.
Okay, Ogre's attack. 29 to hit.
But I only have an AC of 18.
Full damage, I guess. 429 damage.